All right, awesome. So, like I said, today we are going to be talking about Captivate from NewBlue, and we are going to be joined by Joe Zamora from NewBlue. So, Joe, why don't you say hello and introduce yourself? Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. And I am a solutions architect for NewBlue, so a variety of other things. But what we'll be discussing today is basically for any of you familiar with our titling solution named Titler Live, currently version 5, will now be renamed to Captivate. And with this rename, we've introduced a variety of very robust and new features, along with some improvements to our UI and workflows. So we'll be discussing a lot of those changes today and also having a demonstration of what you could expect to see from this new release.
All right, that sounds pretty cool. We were talking yesterday about some of these great features, and I'm excited to have you talk about some of those great features. But why don't you just give us a very brief overview of what NewBlue Captivate is and what it's compatible with?
Sure. So NewBlue Captivate is in fact a CG. So what it can deliver is on-air live titling for any live production, and this includes things from our graphics templates. So that can be either lower thirds, full screen graphics, picture in pictures. When it comes to your sport productions, it'll include a variety of scorebooks, statistical graphics, and all the sort. So we basically have a very comprehensive titling packages, but also every single edition of NewBlue Captivate will also deliver a designer tool so that one, you could import production elements like accents, Photoshops, design files, vectors, so you can create anything from the ground up. Now, it being a CG does in fact mean that it is compatible with all other switching solutions. So things like your TriCasters, Wirecast, Roland mixers, vMix, we can output as a NDI source all the way up to 4K at 60 frames. There are some variances in terms of the functionality with things like, 1080p 4K between the different editions, but we'll get into that with the breakdown.
Yeah, very, very cool stuff that it is compatible with all of those different devices. And you and I have mentioned that this is formerly known as Titler Live. It's getting a rename. And for a limited time, with the renaming, we are going to have an introductory promotional price for 20% off any edition of Captivate now through August 31st. So whether it's Captivate Present, Captivate Sport, or Captivate Broadcast. So all of those are going to be 20% off for an introductory price, but we're going to also make that a little bit better for people that are using the Captivate with a TriCaster specifically. Now that live text isn't necessarily going to be around, this is going to be a good alternative for those TriCaster users. And we're going to, like I said, make that deal a little bit sweeter by giving you 50% off for the Present and Captivate Sport and 75% off of Broadcast. So these are definitely some great deals that you're going to want to take advantage of. And again, these are only available through August 31st of this year. So let's start talking about, again, what you can do with Captivate.
Sure. So Captivate on its own, like I mentioned, is going to be able to deliver real-time on-air live graphics to any of your switching solutions. But one thing interestingly is that you can also do this over SDI key and fill. But additionally, with NDI, we also have NDI with Alpha. Now, the way that the Captivate software operates is that we basically have things in different channels that manage a variety of your production elements and data connections. And you have then the ability to output those channels into your switching solution. With the broadcast edition, we have the ability of outputting up to 16 channels, whether that be through SDI or NDI. Now, with the Present and Sport editions, that'll be a single output, but conveniently enough, that seems to be pretty robust for a lot of our users. So you can address a lot of your production needs with a single channel. Apart from those features, then we have the ability to run real-time data directly into those graphics from a variety of different sources and platforms, mainly being, spreadsheets, XML, JSON, scoring and stats. Now, specifically with scoring and stats, that's going to be compatibilities and integrations with things like Sportscast, Scoreboard, StatCrew, right? We'll basically have a variety of ways, depending on your unique setup, a way to get that real-time data into your production. And new to the Captivate release, never before seen in what was formerly Titler Live, is an integration with Zoom meetings, which I'll be demonstrating during the demonstration.
That's very cool. We're big fans of NDI here, so we're having up to 16 outputs of NDI. That sounds pretty cool to me and very useful. Now, again, Titler Live is changing into Captivate, but it's not just a name change. There are going to be some benefits to this as well. So why don't you talk about some of those benefits, like the Zoom room?
Yeah, so with the Zoom integration, now something interesting we're addressing is how do you create a Zoom meeting that is as engaging as possible? And our idea was to use our graphics engine to really enhance the production value of these meetings, especially now in the day and age where Zoom meetings are so prevalent. We're always looking for opportunities to make them more engaging. So then what we're doing is we're basically communicating with the Zoom meeting, pulling a variety of information dynamically, whether that be participant names, live video feeds, chat, and Q&A, and then just combining all those elements into a pretty sophisticated and robust experience, one for the operator, but also additionally for your audience. Now, with that being said, we've introduced workflows that basically combine all the richness of these features so that you can navigate relatively seamlessly to run your production with very little hassle. And that feature being shot layouts. So that is going to be combining your production elements so that at a single press of a button, all these production elements realize in a very kind of basically the same way you'd be seeing in this webinar, where we have my picture-in-picture in the bottom corner, we have a slideshow at the top and graphics on the bottom. We can drive that all in a single click of a button and then navigate through different configurations of our production elements throughout.
And that
And
sounds, go ahead,
go,
sorry.
oh no, go ahead. You're fine.
I was
Please go
just
ahead.
going to say that sounds very handy, especially if you're going to be, in a Zoom meeting and you want to make sure that you are keeping all of your viewers' attention, making yourself look more professional, all of these things. And this is with no additional cost. This is going to be available
Exactly.
to Present, Sport, and Broadcast mode, right?
Right, and that's the whole philosophy behind the name changes, that we're introducing so many features that just make broadcasting easier, right? An all-in-one solution that is inclusive, that unites all your production elements and workflows to then deliver those very effortlessly and ongoing. That's kind of like the whole idea, right? To captivate your audience, to really show them every single important element of your production.
I see what you did there. So we're going to talk about, each version that is available when it comes to Captivate, and present mode is good for your smaller, maybe education, houses of worship, and things like that. So why don't you talk a little bit about where you see Captivate Present fitting in a workflow, and yeah.
Yeah, so with the present edition of Captivate, we basically, like I mentioned, are capable of outputting a single channel of NDI or SDI, whichever one of your is of your preference for your production requirements. But we offer 300 plus graphics in our graphics collection, also with the ability to customize or design your own. But uniquely with when it comes to the actual worship industry, is that we have an integration with Pro Presenter and Easy Worship. Now, these integrations basically you set up your projects within these applications, and that is a congregation of your lyrics, sermon data, maybe some slides that you have prepared with some information about your service, and we then connect to that real time. Now, we did streamline this quite a bit where we have complementary templates that match the configurations of this data. So if it's a lyrics, then it'll automatically connect with a lyrics graphic, show it on screen, and there's a variety of ways of operating it so that it is as volunteer friendly as possible. Additionally, with Present is you have the ability of importing things like media clips, images, and live video. Now you're going to see some of these also available in Sport and Broadcast, but basically Present is that core edition that if you want to really evolve your production in a meaningful value, but only need, a way to get your production elements easily into the platform, this is going to be a solution for you.
No. Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. I think you hit the hammer on the nail with that, saying that this is the core, the foundation to being able to have these graphics, but then also making it not overly complicated for people that are going to be, potentially volunteers or not having a background in this. And you mentioned some of the shared features with Present, Sport, and Broadcast. So let's move on to Sport. And this is obviously going to be used in a sport production. So why don't you tell us some of the benefits of the Sport
Yeah,
Captivate?
certainly. Now, note that these are all changes that we've introduced with what was formerly known as Titler Live 5. So if there's anybody out there that is on like an older version, right, like Titler Live 4, you'll see that there's a very big difference with Captivate where you're able to get more access to some integrations that were previously never before seen. That one specifically being things like Scoreboard or the ability to bring serial data directly from your score and timekeeping console into Titler Live. And you'll see that the supported consoles for that is Daktronics Fairplay and OES. We found that a lot of people sometimes, don't have a lot to work with, right? They just have a console and we wanted to make a very budget-friendly approach to make sure that they can get that data on air into graphics. And that's basically the solution that we have available for that. We've also updated for any of those familiar with our scoreboard tool, which is a virtual score and timekeeping console that runs it through Tyler Live. We've updated that to a 2.0 version. So we've addressed a few things where, there's some workflow things, but specifically more functionality to your scoreboard. So different ways of managing your clock, different ways of displaying your game events, some automation so you can see how a game event would typically behave. It automatically does that for you. And then beyond that, we'll have XML, JSON, StatCrew stats. Now, StatCrew being that you can connect things from like live stats and sidearm stats, since these services use the legacy StatCrew format for their XMLs. And then just like Present, we have the ability of bringing in Google Sheets, Microsoft Sheets, local sheets, media clips, images, live video, and the ability to output over NDI or SDI at 1080p.
And I think again, you're recapping everything perfectly. I would recap everything perfectly. I think just having the sheer number of programs that it can integrate with and then being able to as easily take out that NDI or SDI source to bring into your TriCaster, your Wirecast, whatever you're using, just makes that streamline so much easier. So now
Right.
let's finish off with Captivate Broadcast, which is taking it all to the next level for a broadcast production. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is Captivate Broadcast, which is the fully scaled version of all the other editions that you mentioned, or that I mentioned. It's going to include all those features in the previous two slides, a little bit more, and that a little bit more being the ability to output up to 4K and doing 16 different channels of either NDI or SDI. Now, SDI being limited to the actual SDI card that you're outputting from. But then apart from that is the ability to directly import After Effects compositions or MOGRTs. And what that does is that it imports directly from After Effects, and it treats that After Effects graphic as a real-time data-driven graphic. So if you want something like your After Effects lower third, After Effects scoreboard to update with on-the-fly changes, be updated with time, score, penalty, clocks, timeouts, you could basically drive all those data changes from Tire Live, but be fetching your After Effects composition or graphic directly there as a live graphic. Now, there's a lot that kind of goes into this, and we do have a lot of resources and documentation to make sure that if this is something you're interested in, that you can, use that as effectively as possible. And then apart from that, we have additional data controllers that are exclusive to the broadcast edition and the ability to customize and build your own controllers with our API access. And then, as mentioned, it also has the ability to bring in Google Sheets, Excel, and all your other production elements to combine them all in a single interface.
That's great, and that's a lot of information. And you know, sometimes the audience can be a little bit overwhelmed, and we are kind of doing like a brief overview. I think you brought up a good point that there is a lot of documentation on this, and if you have any questions about any of the stuff that we've been talking about, and as we transition into this demo, if you have any questions at all, make sure to give us a call. We'll get you in contact with Joe or another support person from NewBlue to answer any questions that you might have. And then also, we've been putting this lower third down just for a little plug that they are going to actually be doing a deep dive into NewBlue Captivate within the coming weeks. So definitely make sure that you're checking out their social medias as well, so you can sign up for that as soon as more information is released on it to get the real deep dive. We're not going to do a deep dive, but we're going to do a little demo overview right now. So, Joe, why don't you kind of show us a little bit about some of the features you were talking about?
Absolutely. So what you should be seeing on display right now is NewBlue Captivate. Now, for those of you familiar with perhaps Starlight 4 or 5, there's a lot of similarities here where the panels that you're familiar with still exist, maybe with subtle name changes, but I still have the ability to reposition and break out these panels and organize my interface however I see fit so I can optimize my experience here. But with Captivate, we introduced a variety of panels that allow you to basically, or shortcuts to basically bring up certain workflows or highlight certain workflows. So one of them being the ability to navigate between setup and live, where if I click setup, it'll configure all my panels in such a way so that everything that is relevant to setting up my production is all here and allocated in such a way where the focus areas are in fact the larger part of the interface. And then when I'm ready to then now produce and go live, I can simply click on live, and then now we're on a minimal kind of, or a minimalist kind of workspace where everything that I need to just operate my production exists on my panel layout. But now navigating back to setup, we can take a look at some other differences here where we can now quickly call panels or dismiss them by just navigating and interacting with these buttons here. So right now we can see my library that's docked. I can decide to dismiss that dock or call it up very quickly. I can hide or show my properties. We can see how responsive the UI is to all these panels being present or not present. Other things too we'll see is that we've introduced a variety of production elements that you can now add to your layers list, or is what we now rename the project panel. So here we can see that I've actually have a sample project that I'm running that it is currently containing a variety of different graphics. And the scenario that I'm kind of emulating here is if somebody was running kind of like basically what we're doing right now, a live show on a meeting platform, and they need a way to route things like live video and other information into graphics. So with this, I have a few lower thirds, a few picture-in-picture boxes, and some, polling, full screen titling. But when we add a new item, we can see at the very bottom, we can add a graphic, an After Effects composition, a shot layout. We can also do transitions, and I can bring in live video or audio. And then we have a workflow item as well. But let's first look at shot layouts. Now, when we want to show a variety of different graphics all at once, previously we had to make sure that there was a way these could all come on air, and that can be relatively tedious for an operator. Making sure clicking 5 different things at 5 different moments, you might miss something, or you might, in fact, miss critical timing. So with shot layouts, what we can do is we can add a new item, create a shot layout, and then we'll see that when we look at our shot panel, here, our shot launcher, we have an empty shot, and we can just easily drag a production element into that shot and then starts building the shot. Another way of interacting and building with your shots is that you actually have your layers or your project list exposed from the properties panel under the shot layout tab, and we can just check these on or off, right, depending on which shot we're currently in, and we can see all the content being added there. And if I click that shot, it brings that all on air at the same time. Now that one's a little interesting looking since I kind of just clicked random ones, but we can see what I've set up here, in fact, for this particular demo. is if I just go to live, we can now navigate on this. So this is just my main title. You click on shot 2. That's just a lower third with whatever full screen video you want to bring in from your switcher. And then here we have a picture-in-picture graphic. And then I'll kind of play around with these to kind of insert some data into them, which is kind of to fly through the workflow. So now our software understands that this picture-in-picture in the top right was already existing live on air. So you can see it doesn't bother animating it on or off because we need this to persist. But all elements that were not on air animate very cleanly on air. And then I can then switch that a bit where now instead of showing a list, it goes to my poll. And then my poll is going to stay on air, but I need these double pips to turn into a single pip to focus on just a single speaker. And then maybe our second guest comes on air. But since our poll is going to go away, we need a larger picture-in-picture to display them. And that's where I'll click on that one. And then we'll get all that working very, very nicely with it for us. Now, the other part that makes this considerably more robust now is the ability to add workflows. So I can add a meeting workflow, which I have added here at the very bottom of my project panel. We can go to setup to quickly see what's existing in that panel there. So we can set up information for speakers, right? So we can put Joe as our speaker, and then our second speaker, we can put James there. And the nice thing about this is that all the content that is in the library is designed in such a way so that if I enter data for speakers 1 and 2, we'll see a lot of that update in real time. We can also add an additional speaker, but let me try something real quick. I'm going to go ahead and delete my meeting object and add it one more time there. And we should see these go there. Now, additionally, from just giving my speaker name assignments, if we do something like, run an NDI production, we can actually bring a variety of guests directly in as live video feeds. So I can actually have somebody in the Teams call called Daniel, and then from the other video input, we can have, Jesse on there, and then we'd have those dedicated feeds on there, and then we can give them their own display name. So I'll go Daniel there, and then I'll click Jesse there, hit enter. And now we prepared basically some key details for those particular production elements, and it'll all be driven to those graphics that pertain to those production elements. It's a really quick way of like managing all that content, making sure it carries across multiple graphics so that we're not having to tediously go within every single graphic to make sure all that content is reflected properly. And that is where something like our conferencing integration with Zoom becomes very important, because from here is where you can then do something like join an existing Zoom meeting, and you can put in your meeting ID, password if it's there, and then your display name because you'll be joining as a guest. And here then you can select a variety of things depending on how it is that you want to use Captivate for that presentation. We can receive audio and video from Zoom. We can send program output to Zoom. So like the way we would be broadcasting NDI or SDI from Tyler Live, we can send our program feed straight into Zoom as a meeting participant. And then we can also open Zoom from Tyler Live. So we have a completely different window. That way, if there's an operator that just wants to have access to the meeting itself, then they'll use that option to get that all running pretty seamlessly from Captivate.
Very, very cool. And I want to just reassure the audience that all of those animations, I'm sure on your end, were playing very smooth. We were just doing a screen capture, so that's why it might have looked a little bit choppy. And I want to apologize for that, but I know that that is just because of the screen share. And in reality, those are going to be much smoother. And I think that the really great thing about that is just how customizable everything was. And then I was really blown away with that Zoom integration right into Captivate. That to me is that's the winner right there. You don't necessarily need to always have a big production system to be able to run all of that through Captivate and then bring it right into a Zoom call for your meeting. Wow, that was very cool, and I'm glad that you were able to kind of show that off. Again, for a deeper dive into this, make sure to check out NewBlue's social media and join in for that deep dive. Now, before we, kind of wrap this up, let you get the final word, I did just want to say that again, because they are, doing an introduction to Captivate, everything that they offer is on sale right now, 20% off. So that again includes Captivate Present, Sport, and Broadcast. And then as well, for TriCaster users, it's 50% off for Captivate Present, Sport, and then 75% off of the Broadcast Captivate, which is just kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. Gary always likes to, when he has a guest on, give them the last word. Is there anything that you want to say last minute? The floor is yours, Joe.
So yeah, so interestingly enough, this webinar was our like actual first official announcement and public reveal of Captivate. So I feel honored that we could use this opportunity to show everybody an early sneak peek at it. And I would highly encourage anybody that is interested in trying the product out. We do have 14-day trial licenses. You can test the software for yourself, see some of those changes, see if this is a solution that is adequate for your production. And my email was on a previous slide. We have our webinar upcoming, so there's plenty of opportunities to learn more about this release.
I'll bring it back up for you right there. There's Joe's email. If you have any questions, you can definitely reach out to him and he will be more than happy to answer them. And, of course, if you have any questions for us, we can answer them as well. 800-323-2325, or you can send us an email at sales@videoguys.com. Joe, I want to say thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you in the future.
I appreciate the time. Thank you for having me on, James.
All right, sounds good. So before we go, I just want to say, you know where to find us. YouTube, subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. We are live every Tuesday at 3 o'clock Eastern. Gary will be back next week, and we'll see you then. So I'll give Gary's traditional peace.
Videoguys is available Monday through Friday. Give us a call at 1-800-323-2325. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram to stay connected with all of our updates. And you can like us on Facebook. Keep an eye out for our live videos, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.